Hi guys, welcome back to the Max Spence Business Podcast. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Deepak. He actually runs his own podcast and he actually also has his own media company. It's great having you on the show, man.
Thanks for having me, man. I really appreciate it. It's been exciting. Excited to come on here.
Great, awesome. I actually first found out about you from LinkedIn, and I saw that you, I believe his name's Hayden Cashin. I saw that you interviewed him, and then you also interviewed, I believe, Greco. I
Tony
can't remember.
Greco.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Tony Greco as well. So that was
Yeah.
pretty cool. So why don't we actually jump right into this? What was why don't we do a little intro about who you are, where did you grow up, and what sort of got you into the world of podcasting?
Awesome. So yeah, obviously I'm Deepak. I pretty much was raised here in Ottawa, but born back in India, and having immigrant parents, I very much listened to what they said and kind of went, the whole university route. Got my business degree, got a safe, stable job in the federal government, and when I was working that job, I just realized that, man, this is not it. I think I want to do something more. And it wasn't that much of a conscious decision, but I'm like, you know what? Let's start a podcast. And I got a lot of validation from a lot of friends around me, and a lot of people kind of gassed me up to do it. And so I just started this thing on the side just for fun, and it's kind of snowballed. And you mentioned Hayden, Tony, some great guests that I had on, good friends of mine, business partners. Like we do a lot of awesome work together. And Hayden's a really good buddy of mine. And you know, I've just been able to kind of grow my network from this. As you know, being a podcaster, it's a great way to connect with people. And yeah, it's kind of grown into me starting my own business on the side as well, and a lot of other things.
That's amazing, man. So what do you actually? I sort of want to jump into that a bit, and I sort of find when I'm interviewing people, it's like I find that people that are wanting to start entrepreneurship is like you said, they're in a job and they're just not as excited, and they think, is this sort of I know that there's some people out there that are very content and happy to work a job at a company and they love what they do. And I also know that there's other people that, they love the job, but at the same time, they want something a little bit more. They want something that's their own and that they can sort of, create and, sort of have their own little thing that they can do. So what do you think it was like? Were you always sort of like had sort of a bug for like, just in the back of your head thinking about you wanted to start something? What didn't have to be in like media or podcasting, or what sort of do you think started that journey?
Great question, man. For me, I don't think I was a natural entrepreneur. I think growing up, I always subscribed to the idea that, I would want to get a really prestigious job. I want to have like a nice fancy title at a company, or I want to do something big, something where I can make a name for myself, whatever that means, right? But as I kind of got to see some people who entered the corporate world, I realized that, oh my God, that's absolutely not something I want to do at all. And, on the same vein, for me either. So, I don't think I played with the idea a lot. I mean, I mentioned I went to business school. I played with the idea a lot of like, could I be an entrepreneur? But I always kind of wrote it off as like, like that's for a certain type of person. Like you have to have, a certain tolerance for risk. You have to be always wanting to sell things. I had these preconceived notions of what starting a business meant, and those things could not be further from the truth. Some of the shyest people I know run big companies. Some of the most extroverted people I know are really happy with their government job. So it's really just for me. I just realized that I wanted to do something a little bit different. And I just want to kind of have a little bit more control and freedom over my life. And mind you, I haven't fully made the jump yet. I still do have my job, and I'm doing all these things on the side, right? And that's something I tell people is like, it doesn't have to be either or. Like, do something until it no longer makes sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. So that's actually amazing that then you must be putting in like 80 to 90 hours a week, because you're doing 40 hours at your main job, and then you're coming home and then you got your podcast, which is pretty much a job in itself. And then you've got, your other business that you're running. So how are you sort of managing that balancing act right now?
I have this weird idea, and when I talk to some of my friends and stuff about that, I have this idea that I'm still fleshing out. So, this is a great opportunity to kind of chat about it. But I don't believe in balance. I don't think there's a such thing. I don't think we ever can achieve balance. I don't think you wake up one day and be like, I'm balanced. I got it all figured out. I'm doing everything in perfect proportions. I'm working this many hours in a day, and then I'm working out, and then this with friends, and then building a business and relationships and all those things, right? I don't think they're ever going to be in perfect balance. I think there's always going to be give and take. There's always going to be sacrifice. You're always going to have to, pick and choose your priorities. And look, this is going to take a little bit more time. And yeah, those 80, 90-hour weeks are pretty typical, but at the same time, there's something I'm after. There's something I'm trying to achieve, right? And right now, that's just the situation. I don't glorify this hustle culture and like you gotta put in those kinds of hours. I have fun too. I let loose. I chill. I try to watch some TV. I try to read books. I try to do those kinds of things. But I don't believe there's a such thing as balance. I believe that we are in constant tug of war, battling of like what our priorities are and where we're going to spend the 24 hours we have in a day. And to kind of like finish that thought, I do believe in harmony instead of a balance. So I believe in trying to make a life fit around you and the things that you want to do, right? So I do things where I'm still able to achieve what people would traditionally call balance, right? But that's just by fitting things into my life that kind of make sense for me. So even way before this coronavirus pandemic, I chose to work from home. I believe that gave me the flexibility. I didn't have to commute to work. I liked, making lunches at home. And mind you, I'm a social guy. I like going to the office. So I'd still go in once a week to the office to go, socialize with people and get some face time. But in a roundabout way, what I'm trying to say is make things fit into your life. If the gym's a priority, get it in before the day starts. If building a business is a priority, don't just watch Gary Vee videos. Go do it and go fail, go experiment, go try it out.
Yeah, I agree with you. I like some parts of that, and I do agree that actually, yeah, it's very hard to find balance, and there's no such thing as actually balance in life. Like, you're not going to be able to find that in life. You're not going to be at this, like you said, you're going to wake up and today's perfectly balanced.
Yeah.
Yeah, I sort of look at it from my point of view is like, all right, well, if I'm wanting to, maybe we'll relax and spend more time with friends, like I'm completely all right with that. But I have to understand that, hey, taking that time away from spending that time at my business is like, that's just going to be, it's just going to take a little bit longer to get to the goals that I want to get to. Right. And if you're okay with that, because like at the same time, it's like, I sort of look at it at the same point as like, we could all die in like the next month or something, or in a week or something. And it's like, do I really want to spend the last year? And I've done it before, is I spent the majority of the year. I didn't hang out with any friends. I didn't do any of that. And I just worked. Pretty much learned a lot from it, but didn't actually, pretty much spinning my wheels in the job that I was doing. Didn't really get too much far, but like economically speaking, but from learning and stuff like that, it was great. But yeah, it's finding sort of something that it's like, a semi balance, making sure that you're doing a little bit of both, and that you're not just killing yourself, um, spending freaking 168 hours just nonstop going and making sure you get enough sleep. So I'd like to ask you on that bit there is, what what do you sort of think of sleep right now? Or are you sort of like, hey, I'm going to push myself to do 5 to 6 hours of sleep? Or are you somebody that's like, no, I need my 7 to 8 hours, or no, or maybe even more, I need 10 hours of sleep for me to function effectively?
Right. So on sleep, I think sleep is the world's most widely available and underused performance enhancing drug. think sleep is extremely important, and it should not be something that's sacrificed for some kind of business or some kind of professional gain, because you can only do that for so long. That being said, there are certain types of people who don't need that full 8 hours of sleep. You know, there's been a lot of studies that show now that, you know, what's more important is getting a full REM cycle. So getting like the proper rapid eye movement, I believe that's what it's called, that deep sleep, that dream state sleep. So I try to get anywhere between 6 to 8 hours every night. Sometimes it's closer to six, but sometimes, you know, if it's a weekend and I don't have something like pressing to do first thing in the morning, I'll get like 7 or 8 hours, and that works for me. I've never really had issues with sleep. It's something that I'm lucky. I'm the type of person where like I've done so much in the day, and you know, I exercise pretty regularly, that when I put my head on the pillow, I'm out. I'm asleep.
Yeah, that is pretty good that that you're able to do that, because I know for myself is that I very much like when I try and go to sleep, it's very hard for me to go to sleep sometimes because my mind's racing. It's really just taking like, it's sort of like I sort of found that meditating has actually helped a bit. Well,
Nice.
just the practice of calming down my mind,
Yes.
because it's like if I try and go to bed and like my brain's like not even like really racing, stressing about stuff, it's just thinking about like random things, and it's just like you just start thinking about random stuff.
Oh yeah.
And I find that if I don't calm it down before I go to bed, then I'm gonna be up till like I'll be lying in bed, but I won't fall asleep till like 2 in the morning, and then you know you get like 4 hours of sleep, and then you just feel like shit the next day, and it's just yeah, it just sucks. So um, that yeah, it's sort of on that subject there. So when you so when did you actually so okay, yeah, so I'm just trying to think about your LinkedIn profile right now. So you've been with the government for over 4 years now, and you started this podcast a year ago. And then sort of what point with the podcast did you actually think like, hey, you know what, I can actually start a business around this? Well, podcasting is a business. Once you hit to a certain point and have enough viewers, you're actually able to monetize and do a lot of cool stuff. But what made you actually start a media company?
I When I started podcasting, I just wanted to do this, what we're doing right now, the conversation part. I found it really fun. Um, Teaching myself about how to use equipment, teaching myself how to edit, teaching myself social media and all these things. I didn't get too much joy from that. I'm like, I don't I realized pretty quick that this is going to be too much work. Like every week, I'm just going to be doing too much. And I pride myself in being, you know, a very productive, lazy person. So I pretty much hired my younger brother to start editing my video podcasts. Right. So I'm like, okay, I'll pay you this much, and I'm going to teach you everything there is to like how to edit, because again, I did that for like the first 15 episodes, and I taught him everything I know. Mind you, I'm self-taught from YouTube, and I just learned like Final Cut and things like that. And I taught him what I want, and he did it, and he learned it. And yes, he was slow, and that process at the beginning was, you know, there was some friction there. It's not easy to like pass on knowledge and like how you want things. But I'm like, you know what? Like I'm not I didn't get into this to be a video editor. That's not my skill set. You know, if even if I spend hundreds of hours, I might just get okay at video editing. You know, it's not something I love to do. So I'm like, why do it? Get my brother to do it. And I'm like, okay, great. This is opening up so much more time. I could do more podcasts, and, you know, he gets paid a bit. He's getting some experience in something he likes to do. And it's kind of a win-win. And then I took that even further. So, you know, social media is not something I like love to like just spend a lot of time on, even though, as you know, with a podcast, it's a big part of it. Is like, that's how you promote it. That's how people find out that there is a podcast that, you know, to even listen to. So social media is something I didn't enjoy much. So, you know, I hit up another friend, and I'm like, hey, like, can you manage my social media? And so, you know, she was been taking care of all my posts and stuff like that. And then Yeah, I even recently got an intern in my company, and she's helping me out with identifying clips of the podcast. Another thing I just didn't want to do. So I realized like I've got a pretty solid team around me at this point, doing a lot of the tasks that I find painful. So I'm like, why don't I like see if other business owners and professionals and busy CEOs and people with personal brands, like, let's see, like I'm sure they don't want to manage all those parts of podcasts as well. So uh, I went on LinkedIn and I just started messaging people, and I was able to build a solid clientele with that. And we branched off as well into videography services, and we've got a contract with the city of Ottawa. We're doing some workout videos. We've got a lot of different contracts in the works, and we're doing social media now. We're doing content creation. We're doing websites, blogs, that kind of stuff. So it's kind of all encompassing right now. And to kind of answer your question, while I was working in the government, I decided, you know what, it's a great job. Like there's nothing wrong with this job, like on paper. I'm not going to sit here and just complain about the job without doing something about it. So I decided, like, let's see where I could go with this agency and just build and build and build. And mind you, we're not even 1 year yet in business, but things are going really well.
Yeah, that's sort of what I wanted to talk to you about, is actually that actually sounds really interesting. So so you scaled very quickly from having that team behind you, right? You weren't doing every little, you weren't doing the social media posts. You were, you weren't working in your business. You were working on your business by sourcing new leads and closing those contract deals. Is that what you would say, like your main objective right now is organizing the people into sort of a team, and then closing those contracts to bring money into the business?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's one of the big priorities. But I've got a great team around me, and like, they're able to handle a lot of the things that I might not be as good at, and then I'm able to focus on, yeah, like you said, the things that are a little bit more high level and that I can't outsource. Like uh, I can't outsource this podcast. I'm here. I want to be here. This is fun for me. This is like enjoyable. I get to meet you, talk about your podcast and all this stuff, and so it's this is what I should be doing. This is what I should be focusing more of my time on. Now, is it a reality for everybody? I'm not sure. It's not something that I recommend to everybody right away. Just go crazy and scale all these things. It costs money. Like it's not free, and you have to be able to sustain that. So a lot of there's a lot of investment on my part in the beginning stages. Equipment, cameras, everything that goes into it. Basically built a supercomputer for my brother to edit from scratch, and then now we've got 2 interns. Now we're expanding our editing team. We've got a videographer, a social media manager. Like things are picking up, but that doesn't just happen overnight, and there is a lot of like management and managing people that has to be done there. But yeah, so that's kind of the gist of it there. But I think it's really important to focus on your strengths. You know what I'm saying? Like, why should I like try to pick up videography? Like, I'm useless with a camera. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd much rather focus on things that I think I'm pretty decent at, and then I want to become like world class at those things.
Yeah, I agree with you, as well as pretty much I was listening, well I was having a podcast with I believe his name's Toby. I can't remember his last name, but he's the co-founder of Three Skills. I don't know if you've seen any of their posts on LinkedIn at all. uh,
No?
yeah, they're actually a really cool company. They help international students actually get job placements after university stuff in Canada, which is I had no idea, but apparently it's very hard to do, to come out of university and be an international student and get that first job placement. So anyway, what he was saying is he was really self-aware of his own skill set, right? And he knew that he worked really well in 3-month bursts, and then after those 3 months, he sort of he needs some time to like recharge or something. But he surrounded himself with a team that was like, with the marketing and, the technology, the technology chief and all these different people that were like, some of them were really consistent, and surrounding himself with that team was really, really important. Um, to pretty much him thriving in that business, doing really well, which is absolutely incredible. Is like you're saying, is you're there's no point doing something in a business that you don't like to do. Maybe at the beginning you have to do it because you don't have the capital, but you have the capital, outsource it, like you're pretty much doing, man.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And a big part of that is, I think, writing down processes and procedures for anything that you know you're going to have to do twice. So, with podcasts, it's really easy to talk about because you know what it's going to look like after you stop hitting record here. You have a process in your head for what you're going to do with that file. You might upload it to a Google Drive, or whatever you do with it, right? It's There has to be something done to it before it then goes out to social media where people can absorb those little bits. So sit down and write every single thing that you have to do, right? And then when you get to the point where you're like, I no longer want to do this, how do I get rid of this? you know there's so many options. You could go on Fiverr and get someone to do it for like $30. And if you then take the time that you saved editing, let's say it takes you like an hour to edit a podcast, you take that hour and go make some more money with that hour so that you can pay someone to do the editing for you. Like, I don't know, to me it just seemed like a no-brainer. Like, why should I edit? And I want to now apply that philosophy to almost every area of my life. Like, I recently just outsourced cooking. I'm done with cooking. I'm like, it's taken me too much time of my day is going to doing groceries, and then prepping the food, clean up, dishes, everything. I'm like, why don't I just get like a meal prep company or something to do this stuff for me? And so that's kind of been a change. And it's all about time. Like, time is a non-renewable resource, but money, there's no ceiling to how much money you can make.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. So how did you so when you started this business, how did you go about actually managing it, and finding the right people for your company, and actually getting it rolling, and then getting those first contracts in? Because it's like, the thing that's sort of, you got to be careful with is, you don't want to bring somebody on and you're not ready to bring somebody on, and then it's coming out of your own pocket, and there's only so much capital that you have before things can get a little iffy. So how did you actually sort of manage that?
Absolutely, yeah. So uh, with me, I surrounded myself with people who I consider close already, and good friends, and people who I know have been kind of a part of my journey from the beginning. And it made sense to partner up with a few people who are able to complement my skill set. And so I've got two business partners, and they're good friends of mine, and we work as a team on a lot of these things. And then another way, like, is subcontracting work. So, you know, I don't necessarily have employees, full-time employees in my company yet, and I don't pay myself a salary or anything like that. So pretty much everything that any client that we bring on, any revenue generated by the company, it's kind of going back into growing the company. So that's where we're in the trenches right now. It's still pretty early, but things are going well, and it's just reinvesting and putting our efforts in the right areas so that we can grow and expand the agency beyond what it is, right? And for me, a big part of that is not spending my time doing some of the lower level activities. Instead, outsourcing that so that I could spend my time doing some of the things that are generating more revenue for the business, things that actually move the needle for the business.
Oh, okay, awesome, awesome. So, actually, I want to sort of pick your brain with a little bit of advice that you'd give to somebody that, like, knowing, you've been in podcasting for a year now. You've also, you're 6 to 8 months into your media company. What are some things, that mistakes that you made early on, that you think were like, hey, if I had to do it over again, I could have, fixed those mistakes and didn't have to go through them?
Interesting. Are you talking about for the podcast or for the agency?
For both, either or, whichever one sort of just comes to your head or whatever.
For the podcast, one thing that I wish I was a little bit more deliberate about when I started the podcast was who my audience is. And, I wish I identified a little bit more of a, what I like to call an ideal listener. Who's all my content for? Who am I talking to? Who am I really getting this message to? Who's listening to this on their car on the way to work? And getting real crystal clear on that, which now I've done, right? And I have that avatar. I know exactly who I'm targeting, but I wish I did that sooner, because I would have probably realized that, um, I don't need to create a separate brand outside of myself for this podcast. It could have really just been under my own name, because I'm central to the podcast, right? And it sounds like a cocky, like a weird thing to say, but it's like the podcast can't really be without me. You know what I'm saying? So why would I create it as a separate brand? But that's the route I went, and it's not really a regret. I still don't think it's a mistake. It's a lot harder to grow from zero, as opposed to just growing with your name. So like, that. I mean, you've got, the Max Spence business podcast, right? So, it's kind of, not there's not going to be another Max Spence that comes around and buys your podcast, because that's you. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So in a roundabout way, what I'm trying to say is getting a little bit more clear on my audience and my distribution, if you will, creating it as more of a personal brand as opposed to just a separate brand.
Oh, okay, awesome, awesome. So, two things on that actually. So, what did you actually find was your ideal listener? And the second one was, what actually sort of media allocations that you've posted your podcast on have given you the best return? Has it been like TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, maybe Twitter, maybe some other sites that people don't know about or something?
Right. So what was the first question again?
Yeah, we'll just do the first. So the first question was, what is your
Right,
ideal
right.
listener? Would you say? Yeah.
Yeah, so I've got it down to these two fake personas. One is named Ashley, and one is named Ashton. Okay, and Ashley and Ashton are, in their early 20s, early mid 20s. They work a job that they don't necessarily love, but they're kind of successful in that. They're doing fine. They're getting by. They're making some money. They pay their bills, but they're not completely happy where they want to be. And so they've always been interested in starting something on the side, having something like you mentioned, their own name, and building their own company or some kind of side hustle or venture, of some sort. They've always been interested in that, but maybe they haven't quite taken the leap, or maybe they just did. So they tune into my podcast to learn from people who have done it, entrepreneurs, business leaders, CEOs, and then also similarly doctors and athletes and people who just kind of done things a little bit different than what society told them to do. So that's what is like the central kind of core theme of who I'm trying to target. These people, Ashton and Ashley, they're listening to the podcast to kind of see an open-ended conversation with people who did things a little bit differently, so that they can level up their health, wealth, and happiness. And I know that's a mouthful, and I know that's a lot, but I now that I have that, I know all my content that I'm going to make is targeting that person, so that that person is way more likely to share a post, to send it to a friend, to relate to something, to comment on it, to DM me. That's the most important metric, to send me a message and chat to me about it, because you know that means they're really listening and they really care and it's impacting their life. And your second question about which social media platform has been like the most impactful in growing, for me, this is another thing that I kind of struggled with. I tried to be on all platforms, and therefore I didn't dominate any of them. But I would say that Instagram, it has been my most popular platform, just because I think the age group that I'm targeting, and Ottawa being a pretty tight knit city where everybody is a friend of a friend, and a lot of people spend a lot of time on Instagram. I decided to go that route and spend 80% of my time on that app. But recently, I love Twitter. Twitter's great. You can have a lot more kind of one-on-one interaction. It's like a megaphone where you're just talking, and then some people can agree or disagree. I like that a lot about it. TikTok, I suck at. I didn't figure it out. I should have. Uh, I'm not the best at TikTok. I did have a friend on very recently on the podcast, though, was a TikTok like God here in Ottawa, and he's blown up and he's done really well with that, and I've learned a lot of tips from him as well. So maybe I'll focus on TikTok at some point. But I'm all over the place. Don't like anyone listening to this, don't listen to me on this. I am not good at this. I am on every social media, and therefore I don't dominate any. So if I had any advice, I'd say, hey, pick one, kill it on that. Spend all your time on there, grow your community, because they'll follow you wherever you go.
Yeah, I actually agree with you on that one. That's like, well, 2 points, like my two thinking, my 2 cents and my sort of thinking points on that is I actually think that's great because for people that got really good at TikTok, you see, they didn't really post anywhere else and they blew up on TikTok, and then they transferred over from TikTok over to YouTube and Instagram, and now it's just exploded. So yeah, I really think that's a great point right there, is get good at one, and then once you grow a huge following in there, then you can start transferring it over to these other, sort of diversify your following to different platforms. My second sort of thought on that is like, the person that I find really interesting is Joe Rogan, and I know he's at the top of podcasting right now. He's at the top of his game. But he has a really interesting, like, his podcasting is like all over the place. Like, he'll have people that are like economists, to doctors, to comedians, to like musicians, to like business owners, like just all over the place, right? So what are your sort of thoughts on that, like, sort of strategy of going, like, just creating a podcast to interview interesting people?
Yeah, so I find it very interesting the way Joe Rogan's gone about it, because it's something that kind of everyone wants to do, right? Like, it's he's just sitting and he's talking shit with people. He sits down and he has a conversation with them from all walks of life, all kinds of different people, like you kind of mentioned, right? But the tricky thing is, for like people who want to get into the podcasting space, is that um you're not Joe Rogan. Like, none of us are Joe Rogan, and he had a huge platform before he even started podcasting. He had Fear Factor. He was well known from being a UFC commentator and being entrenched in the MMA space. So when he started podcasting, it was just something he did for fun on the side. And I'm not saying that no one should do that. Like, podcasts can be a great hobby. It's a fun thing to do. But if you're doing that thinking you're going to be the next Joe Rogan, you probably have another thing coming, because a lot of people think that they could just have a podcast and talk to anybody about anything. Now, I'm a bit of a hypocrite, because that's kind of what I do. I have very open-ended conversations with many different people from different walks of life, right? But the thing is, I've recognized that for me, my podcast is not something that I even aim to grow to be this massive, like, thing that's larger than life. I did it for different reasons. I'm doing it for very selfish reasons, in that I want to document my journey. I want to see, like, when I'm 50, I want to see what 24-year-old Deepak was up to. If anyone asks, I could just go to YouTube and see where my headspace was at, who I was talking to, what I was doing. And so with that in mind, like, I want to talk to everybody. I want to learn from everybody. And I like having those conversations with all kinds of people. That's why I haven't like targeted one niche. Like I don't only talk to business people. I don't only talk to athletes. I don't only talk to entrepreneurs or, doctors or whatever. I want to talk to everybody, but that's not a great way to grow a podcast, because when you target everybody, you target nobody. And if you're just doing it for fun, just for a hobby, or just for some of the reasons I mentioned, yeah, it's great. You don't limit your options on who you could talk to. But Joe Rogan is a very, very unique case where he already had the clout, and he has the connections, and he has the capital, and people, like millions and millions of people, are tuning in every single month and every day. So I love that podcast. It's given me so much inspiration, and I love listening to the perspectives of all kinds of different people. And one thing I'll say that Joe Rogan's done better than anybody is having an open mind and being open to being wrong. And even his personal views and opinions, he doesn't dig his heels in very often, except when you talk about weed. But all kinds of other things, he's very open, and he doesn't he's not married to his ideas. And that's something that I think we could all learn from, and that's one of the reasons why I think he's been so successful.
All right, awesome. Yeah, I sort of agree with you on that point. Is that so yeah, so if you're getting into the podcasting space thinking that you're gonna become like the next Joe Rogan in a year, well, the majority of like you're either in the 1% already and you already have those connections, or you already have a following that you're able to make that transition pretty quickly and pretty efficiently. But if you're starting at ground zero, just some random person in, like, let's say Ottawa, Toronto, and you're 20 years old or like early 20s, and you don't really have a following, like you don't have a huge following, and it's going to take time to grow to any sort of significant level, and it's going to take a lot of dedication, consistency, and putting the work in to get to that level. One thing that I have really found that's really interesting is sort of from YouTube, that sort of really sparked my interest was I well, and also from other podcasts that I watched. Podcasts that grow really quickly are ones that like interview special, like they have interviewing guests on, right? So they're interviewing somebody. I find those podcasts grow really quickly unless the person that's talking is already very, very renowned in that sort of space that they're talking about. But I mean, starting at the ground level and you don't really have like a huge background like myself, I don't specialize in anything right now. But being able to have, specialists and people that have run very successful companies, and other like social media influencers and stuff. That's one thing I've sort of found is having those interviews is really important. And actually with one of my YouTube videos, that like it didn't blow up, but I was actually really surprised that a guy I had on was Evan Carmichael, and he has like 2.5 million followers on YouTube. And then my YouTube video that I put out got like, I was getting around 8 to, like, my highest video beforehand like was 98 views, and then this one just jumped up to 12K views in like 2 days. And
Nice, man.
I was just like, how, what happened? And then I was just like, oh, okay, sort of like it, like that was my sort of plan before, but it sort of really cemented the fact of like, hey, like having an interviewing based podcast when you don't have the experience to rely on, and you can ask the questions to somebody else, is really, really valuable and really effective for your own personal brand and also for people listening.
1000%, man, because you're basically you're framing the podcast as, hey, you're the expert. Let me just ask you a bunch of questions and pick your brain on some things, right? But people like talking about themselves, and so it's often very easy to get people on your show who would love to hear their own thoughts on things, and at the same time get a chance to chat with you. And the biggest thing there is that there's the network effect, the collaboration, you working together, you leverage his network and he leverages yours, and you find out about each other. And a lot of those viewers are probably people who are interested in what he has to say, but now some of them are going to stick around to see what you have to say. And who you're talking to, and some people might really like your personality and like your interview style and whatever you bring to the table that's a little unique. So I think that's something that is very important, is, you know, it's a positive sum game. You know, just because you have a podcast doesn't mean like you and me are in competition. It's a very good thing that you have podcasts, because now more people are listening to podcasts, and we could collab and we could win together and we could grow the whole thing. So it's a positive sum game, you know. So I definitely think that interviews are a great way to go about it if you don't have, you know, one specific topic that you want to talk about. But there's so many ways to go about podcasts, right? Like I would consider this to be like almost conversational more than interview based, right? Because you might have a few set questions you want to ask me, but you also have your own personality. You also have things that you want to bounce off and just chat about.
Yeah, yeah, I agree with that as well. As yeah, like you usually like I wanted to sort of build this podcast into sort of you know, more conversational, and usually like some like depending on the time restraints, sometimes I'll just go straight interview sort of style of it, where I sort of just ask a question that I know people are wanting to hear from this person, and maybe a different sort of context. So I'll do like that, but I really enjoy the time to like turn it more into a conversational and have this back and forth with somebody, and, you know, bounce ideas like you said. So what are your sort of thoughts right now with I know you're very active on Instagram right now. So have you thought about maybe doing a transition over into TikTok and sort of, or actually, sorry, TikTok, and then also have you been using Instagram Reels, and what have you sort of seen from that?
Yeah, great question. I suck at TikTok. I experimented with it in the past, and I went about it all wrong. You know, I started off as a consumer, and I was just going through TikToks, and I found them hilarious. But this was a time when it was like young people dancing to music videos, and I was like, I don't really get it. Like, that's not me. Like, I couldn't do that. And then it started changing, and it was like Vine a bit more, and it was funny, and then there was informational content, like educational stuff. And I was like, I don't know where like I fit in on this. I feel like dated. I just don't feel like I get it. Um, and but I did enjoy scrolling through. But when it came to posting my own content, I put up a bunch of random videos, and like some of me just saying some stuff, and others of me uh, I would repost my Instagram clips for the podcast on TikTok, and nobody cared. I got like 350 views. Like no one gave a shit. Like 50 likes. It was just very. It fell flat, and I didn't have the time or energy to really learn the platform and the distribution and how to create content that's native to the app. So creating like TikTok content, not repurposing content from another platform, which is, you know, you have to create content that's native to TikTok. So I felt like I kind of missed that boat a bit. But then I was on a trip, and I threw up I don't know if you watch any NBA, but I was at the Boston Celtics game, and there's this NBA player named Taco Fall, and he's this super tall giant basketball player, taller than all the other ones. He's like 7 foot something, or yeah, I know exactly how tall he is, and I'll tell you why, because I posted a TikTok of me just zooming in on this guy, and it was the most random video ever. It had nothing to do with my podcast, had nothing to do with me. And I'm like, bruh, this man is 12 foot 11 or something. Like, I just said something ridiculous. Like, this guy's 12 foot. Like, no one's 12 feet, you know? Like, it's a joke. It's stupid. The video blew up. It got like 25,000 views, and uh, like 80 comments, and all the people commenting were writing, "He's 7'7". He's 7'7". Every single person is like, "He's seven," like correcting me, like as if I didn't know he's not 12 feet. And I'm like, bro, like I don't get this app. Like, I posted something that has nothing to do with anything. I made a joke, and it got picked up by the algorithm, and like so many comments. So I could have taken that and then gone into TikTok, but it just, I'm like, I just don't get it. And I kind of stopped posting content from there. But all that to say, TikTok's awesome, man. It's great. It's a great way if you take the time to learn and grow. But it comes back to what I said at the beginning, like, do I have the time or energy to be omnipresent and on all platforms right now? We were talking about priorities and balance before. This It doesn't fit. I don't have the time to create that content right now. But maybe I'm missing a huge opportunity to grow a massive platform. And then Instagram Reels is an interesting one too, because I'm already on Instagram and I feel like it's kind of a newer feature. So Instagram really favors any of their new features for organic engagement. So it's something that I might experiment with. I don't like that it's 15 seconds. I don't really know what to do in 15 seconds. And I just feel like their app is a little cluttered. There's too much going on now with stories, IGTV, Reels, and carousels, and it's just hard to grow on Instagram now if you're not paying for ads. So I'm going to talk to my social media person about it. I'm going to come up with a strategy and see where I could get the most bang for my buck. But LinkedIn is really interesting. Like, it's really great for organic growth, and so I might take LinkedIn a little bit more serious.
Yeah, yeah. I've actually so the primary focus with the podcast is actually on LinkedIn right now, and yeah, it's like you said, you have to create like natural. I can't remember the word you used, but it was like natural content to that app. Pardon me? Native,
Native
yeah.
content, like
Native content to that app, and that is very, very true. Because what I'm doing right now is I don't have a lot of time, but I'm reposting. Just like I'm hitting a broad spectrum right now, and I'm sort of just playing with it, with the different social media platforms, and just seeing what sort of reacts with what, sort of gain some personal knowledge of the app to be like, oh, this did well here, and then it didn't do well here, but it's the exact same post. What's the reason
Right.
behind that? And I sort of found with LinkedIn, it's very, very heavy on written content and sort of like quotes and stuff, like like doing like or like maybe a picture of something. That's what I've sort of found. But I've also seen quite a bit of success from like posting about a podcast, and having the person that I had on the podcast reshare it into their sort of network as well. That opens up an entirely new sort of network, right? But yeah, that was sort of my point of view on that. So we're coming to the end here. So we're coming to the end here. Where can people actually find out more about you? What you do and your sort of podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Great question. So for me, my social media, you can find me at It's Not That Deep Podcast on Instagram. You can connect with me on LinkedIn, Deepak Sharma. And on Twitter, I have a kind of a funny handle. It's CEO of Podcasting. I don't know if I'm gonna keep that, but it gets some good laughs. Our website is deepdigitalmedia.ca. There's tons of ways to contact me. I'm really accessible. I love podcasts. I love to just connect with people, grab a coffee, and just chat. So yeah, you know where to find me.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show, man. It's been great talking with you. You're a really interesting guy,
Yeah,
and
man.
for sure, guys. Anybody listening to this podcast, please go, maybe reach out to this guy or listen to his podcast. He's had some really amazing guests on his show.
Thanks so much, Max, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do this with me, man. It's cool to be on the other side of the mic, and you did a great job with amazing questions. So I hope your podcast skyrockets and you see all the growth and success that you deserve from putting all this work in. So thanks, man.
Thank you, man.